Hello and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm Anna Kalczyńska. The United States and Ukraine have signed a deal that will give Washington access to Ukrainian mineral resources and set up a joint fund to invest in reconstruction of the war-torn country. The U.S. side has been working towards an agreement since Donald Trump returned to the White House in January. The deal, signed late Wednesday, does not automatically hand Washington a share of Ukraine's mineral wealth, of any of its gas infrastructure. It provides for a creation of a joint U.S.-Ukrainian fund for reconstruction, which will receive 50% of profits and royalties accruing to the Ukrainian state from new natural resources permits in Ukraine. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent described the agreement as historic.
Thanks to President Trump's tireless efforts to secure a lasting peace, I am glad to announce the signing of today's historic economic partnership agreement between the United States and Ukraine, establishing the United States-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund. This partnership allows the United States to invest alongside Ukraine to unlock Ukraine's growth assets, mobilize American talent, capital, and governance standards that will improve Ukraine's investment climate and accelerate Ukraine's economic recovery. The Development Finance Corporation will participate and help to establish this fund in collaboration with the government of Ukraine. Today's agreement signals clearly to Russian leadership that the Trump administration is committed to a peace process centered on a free, sovereign, and prosperous Ukraine over the long term. It's time for this cruel and senseless war to end. The killing must stop, and both the United States and the government of Ukraine look forward to quickly operationalizing this historic economic partnership for both the Ukrainian and American people.
A Russian drone strike in the Ukrainian port of Odesa has killed 2 people and injured at least 5 others. Local media report that the Russian strike overnight between Wednesday and Thursday caused a series of fires across the city. The regional governor said several residential high-rise blocks, homes and a school were all damaged by the flames. Ukraine's Air Force say Russia launched 5 ballistic missiles and 170 drones during overnight attacks. The Air Force shot down 74 drones, while another 68 failed to reach their targets. Media report that air alerts were sounded in 11 regions of Ukraine. And here is the breaking report from our correspondent on the ground, Don Arleth.
Now, we were awakened from our sleep, hearing these attacks on Odesa, hearing the anti-air defense working. And, well, this is supposed to be a UNESCO-protected city, a city that is part of world cultural heritage. And the Russians obviously don't respect this. We are smelling smoke right now from burning metal and burning plastic. This was a Shahed hit that was not far from here, not far from where we're living here. Next to the port of Odesa. We've heard several points in the city that were hit by Shahed drones.
The EU is preparing for an eventuality where the Donald Trump administration abandons Ukraine peace talks in favor of a rapprochement with Russia, said the bloc's top diplomat Kaja Kallas in a recent interview with the Financial Times. The EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy was quoted by the Financial Times as saying, "We see signs that they are contemplating whether they should leave Ukraine and not try to get a deal with the Russians because it's hard," referring to Washington. These comments follow a wave of statements and efforts from the White House to normalize relations between the US and Moscow. The so-called EU Plan B includes maintaining economic pressure on Russia no matter which way negotiations go. Kallas also added that talks were ongoing with Washington and other international partners to ensure the Western sanctions regime is kept in place. Ukraine has never been an obstacle to achieving peace, said Andrii Sybiha, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, referring to ongoing peace negotiations with the US and Ukraine's readiness to reach a ceasefire with Russia. He emphasized that Russia is slowing down the process and called on Ukraine's allies to collectively increase pressure on aggressor country.
Recently in Rome, President Zelensky had a very meaningful and valuable meeting with President Trump, which brought forward significant developments. It was truly a meeting with qualitatively new elements. We have had several rounds of negotiations with our closest allies in the E3 USA-Ukraine format in Paris and London. The E3 format includes Germany, France and the United Kingdom. Undoubtedly, the next step will be another meeting in this format. Currently, consultations are ongoing among allies to determine the location, format and substantive content, as the main focus is on meaningful content and results. At present, all our efforts are directed towards achieving a just peace, and a fundamental step on this path must be the establishment of an unconditional ceasefire. Ukraine accepted this unconditionally in Jeddah, and now we must all collectively pressure Russia to provide the clear response to the proposal for an unconditional ceasefire on land, in the air and at sea. Ukraine has accepted this proposal. We are ready, and Ukraine has never been an obstacle to achieving peace.
Ukraine is ready for any format of conversation with Russia, but the strikes need to stop, said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in his recent evening address to the nation. Such a message was to be conveyed during Zelensky's meeting with a delegation from Luxembourg.
Today, there was a lot of technical work with our partners, primarily diplomatic work. We are preparing meetings and negotiations that will take place soon. Security is the main priority. I spoke today with ministers, including the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Defense of Luxembourg, who were our guests. First and foremost, we discussed our cooperation in Europe and support. I want to thank them for supporting Ukraine. Of course, we talked about diplomacy, about the need for a complete ceasefire, unconditional and for a sufficient period, at least 30 days. Strikes must stop, killings must stop, and after that, solutions must be sought in negotiations. We are ready for any format of conversation. Russia must stop the strikes and the war.
Today, Poland is marking the 21st anniversary of its accession to the European Union, which took place on May 1st, 2004. Warsaw will host a series of events to mark the occasion, including a military display, marching bands and a mass picnic. More than 77% of Poles voted in 2003 referendum in favor of joining the EU. The past 2 decades have seen significant impact in the country's political, economic and social development. Despite the recession, pandemic and the war in Ukraine, Poland has become a more prosperous country. And according to the Statista data platform, Poland's GDP per capita is estimated to be 40% higher than if Poland had not joined the community. European countries had until midnight to apply to trigger an EU mechanism allowing for more defense spending. So far, roughly half of a dozen countries have signed up a part of the Readiness 2030 plan. So what happened next? Our EU correspondent Angela Skujins has the timeline from Brussels.
Poland, Latvia, Estonia, Germany and Greece have all applied at the European Commission to trigger their national escape clause. This would free up roughly billions of euros in defence spending as part of the European Commission's big push to get all of the 27 EU member states battle ready for whatever threat comes their way by the end of the decade. Now, hypothetically, if all of those 27 EU member states trigger the national escape clause, it would free up 650 billion euros that those member states could tap into. However, they would have to fund from their own coffers. Now, what happens next? The European Commission will take the next month to assess these applications and hand down its overall report card at the beginning of June. Then it will go to a European Council where the 27 European countries will offer their final seal of approval to determine whether those member states, such as Poland, can forge ahead with their national escape clause plan to spend more on defence without falling foul of the EU's strict financial rules, which Poland has suffered from in the past, being targeted with an excessive deficit procedure by spending more than 3% of its GDP on a range of projects. But the most important thing to look out for in this timeline is that it is meant to come into effect roughly coinciding with that Hague NATO Summer Summit scheduled for the 24th and 25th of June. We're expecting NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte to announce that 2% funding benchmark as part of the military alliance to be scaled up. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
Polish-American cooperation, including in the field of defense, is currently at its highest level ever, says Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. The Prime Minister made the statement while commenting on the decision of the U.S. Congress to approve the sale of $1.3 billion worth of air-to-air missiles to Poland. Tusk went on to stress the importance of air defense, pointing out that Europe is lacking in this area.
In terms of air defense, defense against missiles is one of the greatest weaknesses across Europe. The war in Ukraine continues to showcase the importance of air defense. The Iran-Israel conflict has already shown several times how important and effective dome is. Therefore, it goes without saying one needn't be a defense specialist to understand that 400 cutting-edge rockets defending the Polish skies is a crucial achievement. Polish-American cooperation, including in the field of defense, is currently at its highest level ever. The US Congress's approval of the sale of air-to-air missiles to Poland is not just a technicality that will allow the deal to move forward, but also a testament to the strength of the Polish-American alliance, regardless of who wins the elections in either country.
Poland and France have agreed to sign the long-awaited friendship treaty after months of negotiations. Our correspondent Alex Cadier has the latest from Brussels.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron will host Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk in the city of Nancy on the 9th of May to sign what is being called a friendship treaty, really strengthening the bonds between Poland and France, long-standing historical bonds, but really renewing a treaty that was signed in the 1990s between the two countries. A real sign, of course, of the growing importance of Poland's place within the European defence apparatus. This friendship treaty will focus in large part on bringing the two countries closer together when it comes to defence issues. So clearly an important step. President Macron announcing this just in the last day or so, expressing a desire from France to build stronger relationships with Poland as quickly as possible. And even the choice of the city of Nancy is no coincidence. It was the final residence in the 18th century of the Polish king Stanislas Leszczyński. Clearly a historic symbol there of that long-standing relationship between France and Poland. We've heard French ministers saying that, in fact, the relationship with Poland that France has should be the same as close allies like neighbouring countries of Spain, Germany and others. Clearly a step forward in the French-Polish relationship. In Brussels, Alex Cadier for TVP World.
And we move now to the sport. Barcelona and Inter Milan served up a 6-goal Classic Champions League semi-final that ended in a 3-3 draw. Inter made an explosive start, opening the score within the first minute, courtesy of Marcus Thuram. The visitors extended their lead in the 21st minute with Denzel Dumfries finding the net. However, teenager Lamine Yamal led Barcelona's fight back, unleashing a superb strike from inside the box to reduce the deficit. Barca's Ferran Torres leveled the score into in the 38th minute with a first-time finish. Inter regained the lead in the 64th minute when Dumfries headed home from a corner. The host responded immediately as Rafinha restored parity. The result leaves everything to play for in the return leg at the San Siro next Tuesday. And with this positive news on the lighter note, we end and conclude this edition of World News. But please don't go away, as we are coming back very shortly with next coverage.